Welcome to talkSPORT USA with myself, Will Varney. Great to have your company as ever, building up to a big championship weekend that's coming up, as well as all the build-up in just a couple of weeks to Super Bowl 60, live from Santa Clara at Levi's Stadium. We'll, of course, be bringing you the game on talkSPORT, but I mentioned championship weekend coming up. Will the LA Rams be one of those teams fighting it out in Santa Clara? They've got a tough mission on their hands this weekend, that's for sure, going up once again against the Seattle Seahawks. And to give us a bit more insight into the Rams this season and how they're preparing for such a big game, pleasure to say, joining me once again on the channel. We spoke back in London back in October. It's ESPN's Rams reporter, Sarah Barshop. Sarah, how are you?
I'm doing great. I can't believe that trip to London was this season. It feels like a long time ago.
Oh, I know. It has been a long time. Trust me. Look, I just recently came back from Seattle feeling very jet lagged, but I was there to see the Seahawks in full swing. We'll get into them in a moment and the challenge they present. But firstly, I mentioned there, we spoke in London back in October. And I think for many, the Rams were on people's radar at that point. But really, that performance against the Jaguars really maybe shot them straight into the limelight as many people's Super Bowl favorite. When you assess coming into this season and then where we find ourselves now with an NFC Championship on the horizon, have the Rams matched your expectations of where you thought they would be come to this point?
I think if you had asked me maybe in June and said, do you think this team could win a Super Bowl? I would have said, yes, I do. But then we got to training camp at the beginning of the season and Matthew Stafford's dealing with a back injury. And everyone around the organization was saying it's just precautionary. This time they're holding him out. It's going to be okay. We're not worried about it, which I believe them. However, you don't want your 37-year-old quarterback to be dealing with a back injury. And so I'd say if you had asked me probably at the beginning of the season, I would have said, let's see how much he's going to play. Let's see if he's even out there. And since then, he has kind of said, I didn't know. There's a time when I didn't know if I'd be starting the season healthy. And so I think maybe at the beginning of the seasons, my expectations were lowered a little bit just because we didn't know how healthy their starting quarterback was going to be. Became very clear pretty quickly that he was healthy and then he was playing at a very high level. And so you're right, that London game was Devontae Adams' big kind of coming out party in this Rams offense. He had 3 touchdowns. Puka Nacua didn't play in that game. And it was kind of like, okay, well, if Puka's out, if he's going to miss time, it's all right because they have Devontae Adams and he can be productive, especially in the red zone. So I think that was kind of, I agree, the where everyone else around the league maybe said, and this Jaguars team was good. I think it's even more impressive now that you look how good they were at the end of the season and kind of where they went with Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence. So I think the expectations have gotten higher and higher now, obviously getting ready to play in a championship game. But I think London, that's kind of when everyone around the league said, yeah, maybe this is going to be a really good team.
Absolutely. It's like you say there, no Puka Nacua, so it was the Devontae Adams coming out party. It was the really showing the depth of the talent, especially at tight end in that game in particular. And really, they've just continued to step up week after week through this season. Look, I mentioned there, I was in Seattle. I saw that game at the weekend between the Seahawks and the 49ers where really Seattle just put on a show. And look, the Rams know what to expect from this team. They play them twice a year. And look, they played them back in week 16. It goes to overtime, the drama of just losing by a single point. And that was a game which, as you well know, the Rams could win that one. They could put themselves in a great place to potentially win the West and get the 1 seed. So what lessons do you think Sean McVay, this coaching staff, this team learned from that defeat back in week 16 ahead of this weekend?
I think I look back at special teams, and I think probably prior to that game, did the Rams know that special teams were the weakest unit, phase of their game? Yes, they did. Obviously, the changes, I think week 10, moving on from Joshua Carty, going to Harrison Mevis, moving on at long snapper. Some changes were made, but it was after that Seattle game that he said, I believe that we could go far, that this team could go far, and this could cost us in the playoffs. And it's cost us in games this year, but it really could cost us in the playoffs. And I think that Seattle game was obviously that's a big reason they lost that game. And so they made the change at special teams coordinator. And I think that's kind of in the back of everyone's mind, right? Like the offense played really well in that game. The defense for a lot of the game played really well too. And so if special teams can play the way they have the last couple of weeks, obviously Harrison Mevis won the game for them, 42-yard field goal in Chicago. I think that's something that everyone kind of feels better about than maybe they did leaving that Seattle game.
How do you assess Sean McVay's mood at the moment? I thought it was really interesting towards the end of the regular season. We have that defeat against the Seattle Seahawks, and amongst all that, he's having to deal with all the noise off the field around Puka Nacua. There's then the defeat to the Atlanta Falcons, where he was very adamant post-game, we're going to play, that sort of statement. And then, we see against Chicago, I think he came out after the Chicago game and said, we need to be better as a coaching staff. Is he feeling the pressure right now?
I don't think so, and I think it's because he believes in Matthew Stafford and himself, right? That this won't happen again. He's been pretty open talking about, like you said, I didn't have my best game calling plays, and he said if we had lost that game and on that my 3rd-and-1 call in overtime, if that had been the reason the season ended, he said yesterday, he said that would have made for a really hard offseason. And so I think, look, they believe the offense is better than what has happened over the last couple weeks. I don't know that he's feeling the pressure, but I do know that he believes it's a tough task. I think any team would think that going into Seattle.
You were there in Chicago just a few days ago. What was the mood around that team? Like you just mentioned there, that there was this relief that the play call comes off and they find themselves in the NFC Championship. But what was the mood surrounding the team after such a big win in tough conditions? How did you find that?
You said it, relief. I mean, that's kind of the feeling I got in the locker room was, and actually, I thought the most interesting perspective this week came from Davante Adams, who has played in 4 other NFC Championship games. He's never made it to a Super Bowl. And pretty early, actually, after the Rams had clinched the playoffs, he had said, excuse me if I'm not celebrating, if I don't have this big smile on my face, if we win the first round, if we win in the second round, I've been here and I've never been to a Super Bowl. And he reiterated it again this week, he called it, I think he said something like, it's almost mythical to me, right? The idea of going to play in a Super Bowl. And so I think he has had the perspective of, yes, it's very exciting to be in this position, but it doesn't matter if we don't keep winning, if we don't win 2 more games, essentially. And so I think there was relief, and also okay, it could have definitely gone the other way in Carolina too. If we are going to go to Seattle, and I think this is something Sean McVay said right after the game, was we watched what Seattle did to San Francisco. We know they are very good, and it's going to take everything we have. We cannot play like we did this, the last couple weeks, essentially, because we have to bring our A game if we want to win in Seattle.
You mentioned it there, and almost the best teams, don't they, in the league, find a way, even if they're not playing at their best level. You mentioned Matthew Stafford in your very first answer. Look, we've had the NFL Honors finalist list come out only in the last couple of hours. Matthew Stafford, of course, as many predicted, named as one of those candidates vying to be MVP alongside Drake Maye. Look, Sarah, I've got to put you on the spot here. Does Matthew Stafford deserve to be MVP? What do you think?
I think he does. And I was having this conversation with someone in the press box last week who lives in New England and covers the Patriots pretty closely. And I think we both kind of agreed, it's hard when you've watched one person up close and seen what they are doing and how their teammates respond. I think it's hard. I think both could deserve it, right? I think that's the biggest thing. Both deserve it. I don't know that Matthew Stafford will win it. I think what I've seen online is the analytics favor Drake Maye. I mean, to me, I look at touchdown passes and passing yards, and I don't think Matthew Stafford should be penalized by playing with Puka Nacua and Davante Adams and having Sean McVay call his plays. But there is a reason I don't vote for this award. I'll be very interested to see, because Matthew Stafford won the PFWA. We vote, members of the Pro Football Writers Association vote. He won the MVP award, and then he was first team All-Pro for the quarterback for the AP's poll. And that's the same voters as MVP. But I know in the past with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, it kind of had switched too. So I'll be very interested to see. My guess is that Drake Maye wins, but I think both are certainly deserving.
I've had a couple of wow moments this year when I've been able and lucky enough to watch football in person. And one of those was that game in London back in October, watching Matthew Stafford. And you sort of sit back in your seat and you go, wow, I think it was a 5-touchdown day for him. It was an NFL London games record. And you do sit back and go, he's good. And I had it last week when watching the Seattle defenses. To see both of them come together this weekend is just some mouth-watering clash. And look, Matthew Stafford, you mentioned it at the very beginning. There was a lot of doubts about him coming into this season and that back injury. But I suppose the next question surrounding Matthew Stafford is really what next? And he's shown this year he can play at still such a very high level, regardless of maybe some of the little noise about could this be his final season. What do you make of it all? Do you feel like if the Rams are to be lucky enough to get to Santa Clara, if they're to win Super Bowl 60, do you foresee Matthew Stafford being the type of guy to hang up his cleats on a high? Or do you think, look, he's just still going at such a high rate, he'll continue?
You know what? I've had this conversation a lot this year, and I think had he had a good season and the Rams won the Super Bowl, I could maybe see him stepping away, right? Like you win. However, he has played the best football of his career. Now, I am not a competitor like he is a competitor, but I imagine when you know that you can play that well, and it's not just that everything has gone right, you're playing very good football and you are surrounded by a team that can win. Puka Nacua is under contract. Davante Adams is under contract. This has a young defense. You have Sean McVay. You believe that the window doesn't close win or loss in the Super Bowl. And so, look, could he step away? Could he win MVP Super Bowl and walk away? Absolutely. Do I have a hard time believing that for as well as he's playing, he doesn't want to see, can I win another one? Yeah, I would have a hard time seeing that.
Look, another player I have to mention who's sort of a nominee on these NFL honors list is Puka Nacua. And I read the article that you did for ESPN just today about that sort of relationship and how he's grown Puka Nacua in terms of being the 5th round rookie and that relationship that he built with Cooper Kupp when he came into the building and now Davante Adams. Talk to me a bit about the growth that you've seen in Puka, especially this season, going from that rookie just 3 years ago to now one of the best in the league and that relationship he's built, particularly with Davante Adams.
Yeah, I think, look, he has been so open about coming into the league and realizing Cooper Kupp is here and I'm going to soak all that in. And I talked to Rams receivers coach Eric Garber and he said, I told him so early, like you hang on to Cooper's coattails and you do whatever he says because he is going to help you so much. And he did, and to Cooper's credit, he was willing and open to be a mentor to Puka. And in reporting this story, I talked to Puka about it and he said, it's so unique because Cooper and Davante are just so such different receivers. And he was saying I was able to learn so different things. And you could kind of tell when Davante Adams signed in LA, just the first couple of OTAs that they were on the field together and during training camp, you could see Puka watching. And just he talked about the releases and he would say, I watched that on film and now to be in a film room and to get to ask him, what were you thinking on the release? And Eric Garber was telling me about this. And he said, some of the questions that he hears Puka ask. And he said, he says, Davante, critique my route. And I said, is Davante harsh? Like, are they honest with each other? He said, oh yeah, they both are because they both respect each other so much. And he said, Davante knows that if Puka is good, it is very good for the Rams. And Davante yesterday even said, it's cool because, the respect is there, and he was like, it's flattering, but it makes me want to pour into him even more. And so I don't know if there's a receiver in the league who's been in a better position than having those two guys kind of be the mentors. And Sean McVay said, right, both of those players, Davante and Cooper, have to be willing to pour into Puka, but also Puka has to be willing to want to listen. And Davante even said, he's been really good. And for him to still be humble and still want to learn is pretty cool. And that's kind of what I've gotten from talking to people in the organization is that Puka, look, he had a record-setting rookie year, had a lot of fun off the field. He was meeting LeBron, sitting courtside, participating in the dunk contest. And I've had several people point out to me, it's pretty telling of his character, or at least his desire to get better, is that he has kind of focused on learning from Cooper and learning from Davante despite the success he had early on.
And that's it. Matthew Stafford hasn't had to lean particularly on him this year because he's got Davante Adams as well. And I think that says they complement each other so well. And like you say, being able to learn from one of the best in the game is going to make you even better. Final couple of questions from me, Sarah. I wanted to sort of get a feeling for Chris Shula and a lot of noise surrounding him right now with the NFL head coaching cycle. It's in full swing. Only yesterday on the channel, we were talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Steelers and their fans in particular are one of these teams who are after Chris Shula. It feels like wanting that young defensive coach with a history of a family history within the sport. What are you hearing in and around the building right now surrounding Chris Shula? And does it feel like he will be back with the team next year, or do you get a sense that he's just going to get a job offer that's going to be too good to take?
I think that's the interesting thing. Like, I think there will be job offers. Is it the opportunity that he feels like is the right fit for him? And now look, there are only so many head coaching opportunities, but I do believe that Sean McVay has kind of impressed upon his assistant coaches, his coordinators, like make sure it's the right fit. And so I don't know if he'll be back. I do think it's interesting. Had the Rams lost to the Bears, and you see these hirings happening now. Could he interview this week? Is that different than now they have to wait until after the game, that bye week? I think the 26th is the first day they can interview. So for him, Mike LaFleur, Nate Scheelhaase, like it's interesting to me the timing. Are teams willing to wait for coaches who are still in the playoffs? And the answer, of course, is yes. But sometimes someone who comes in and is available right now maybe just has an in-person interview that blows them away, and it kind of makes the decision for them. So, look, there are a lot of people in that building who want Chris Shula back. Obviously, would be very happy for him if he found another opportunity. But talk to some young defensive players who have said that they hope that, if possible, Chris Shula is back in the building next year.
Another one of those coaches who's seemingly getting a lot of attention is one you just mentioned, in Nate Scheelhaase. And I think it's fascinating because maybe not many people know much about Nate. He's as far as I'm aware, the passing game coordinator, but he's not the OC like Mike LaFleur. So could you just give us a sense of why do you feel like teams are so interested with Nate's background right now? And why is he getting some interview opportunities?
So he took two offensive coordinator interview opportunities last year in Jacksonville and in Tampa Bay. And from what I've heard, he blew them away. And he is young. He, like you said, is not an offensive coordinator, but I've been told, I've spoken to him. He's very smart. Sean McVay has spoken very highly of him. He's called plays in college. And so I don't know that he'll get a job, but I know it's not just hey, you're in Sean McVay's coaching tree, we want to talk to you. Like, I don't believe it's that at all. I think people have come away very, very impressed after talking to Nate Scheelhaase, and it wouldn't surprise me at all even if not this year, if very soon he ends up as a head coach.
Like you say, Sean McVay wanting to keep hold of these really talented staff. But look, if the opportunity comes calling, they're just going to have to take it. Final question from me, Sarah. Look, this weekend then, the NFC Championship, a spot in the Super Bowl on the line. How do you see this weekend playing out? What's your prediction come Seahawks against the Rams?
I don't know if I've ever not known the answer to that question more in a game.
I put you on the spot. I have.
I know. I just think they're both evenly matched. Now, do I think the best Rams team can beat the best Seahawks team? Like the best Rams performance this year beats the best? Yes, I do. Have we seen that Rams team put on that performance since the first half of the game in Seattle in Week 16? I don't think so. I think there's something to be said of that because I think they haven't played their best game yet. Seattle might have just played it against San Francisco. But I will give the edge to the Seahawks just because they're at Lumen Field. I think if it's at SoFi, it's a different situation. But I heard the crowd in Chicago was really loud, and it was giving them some trouble. I think the 12th man in Seattle is going to be a problem for the Rams too. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a really fun game. But ultimately, if I'm picking in a very close game, I'm going to take the home team.
Well, just finally, then, just quickly on that, it's really interesting you mentioned there they haven't been that good since the first half of that Seattle game. What do you think that's down to then? This sort of stumbling into the playoffs, you could say. Is it fatigue? What do you put that down to?
Part of it is the schedule they've had to play the road game. And obviously I live this because I've been at every game, but I was looking at the schedule and 6 out of their last 8 games have been on the road. The teams aren't scheduled to play 3 road games in a row during the regular season. That's what's going to happen at Carolina, at Chicago, and now at Seattle. Like, this is a very unique path. Now, no one will ever use that excuse. I think part of it, the defense, was Quentin Lake getting hurt in the first game against the Seahawks. He just came back in the playoffs. Devontae Adams didn't play those last 3 games of the regular season. I think they are still kind of getting back together in general. I think they're pretty healthy now. So I'll be really interested to see what version of the Rams team we see against Seattle in the NFC Championship game.
Oh, we can't wait. It's going to be so much fun. It's going to be live on talkSPORT too. We can't wait for the action. Look, Sarah, as ever, really, really appreciate your time. Safe trip to Seattle. And look, maybe we'll be catching up in a couple of weeks in Santa Clara as well. Thank you so much.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on.